So, with regard to Russiagate, I notice that many Democrats seem to really believe that there'd been collusion between the Trump administration and Vladimir Putin and Russia to hack the 2016 election. And I notice, like many ordinary Americans who are liberal, like even professionals, even attorneys and doctors, accountants, like they genuinely believed that Russia had hacked into our electoral vote counting machines to flip the result to Donald Trump in Michigan and Donald Trump in Wisconsin, etc. And there was never any evidence that Russia had effectively hacked our vote counting machines or software. Like there's some evidence that they'd made attempts to play around, but there was no evidence that votes had been changed by Russian operators to throw the 2016 election to Donald Trump. So Russiagate has a truth, meaning was there real collusion there by Trump and Putin? No, there wasn't. There was no collusion. You had some Russian operatives who bought some Facebook ads and just really low-level operators, just nothing people. We find out in the Mueller report. So I notice in real life there are a lot of true believers who are like up in arms that the election had been hacked because Trump was colluding with Russia. Now it's not always easy to tell when people believe these kind of allegations or they're just passionate about them because they see them as the most useful tactic. And I'm thinking about an analogy to real life. So for many years I would get dismissed with the accusation, well, you never completed your conversion to Orthodox Judaism. You never managed to make it through an Orthodox Beit Din. And then as soon as I completed that, those accusations ceased and people would find something else to attack me on. So they used to attack me 25 years ago. They'd say, oh, I wonder what Dennis Prager would think about what you're saying or doing now. So people are always probing for your weak points, and it's not even consciously thought out. It's just like even 90 IQ people can figure out your weak points and press on them. So too with the Russia-Gate collusion narrative. Like I noticed liberals are often very passionate about it. And it wasn't clear, did they actually believe this? Or did they just see this as the most effective tactic for distracting, hamstringing, reducing the effectiveness of the Trump administration? And it was effective as a tactic. Right? Donald Trump's ability to run the country and to pursue his agenda was compromised by the Mueller investigation, by these Russiagate collusion narratives. It was the dominant story in the mainstream media for about 2.5 years. Now, I think the smarter, more aware Democrats realized it was just a partisan attack that didn't have much reality. They just saw it as an effective attack to reduce the credibility, legitimacy of Donald Trump. So your smart, self-aware operator would know he's running a game. And then your less smart and less aware, less informed partisan will really believe it. It's like if you got really upset that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were responsible for the Benghazi attack that killed our ambassador and about 4 other Americans in 2011, then you weren't particularly well informed, because these things happen. There may have been some shortcomings by the Obama administration, but it was a partisan tool that the Republicans were using to just try to beat the Obama administration with. And now with these voter fraud accusations, I think like smarter, more informed people regard these allegations as a useful tool to hamstring, reduce the legitimacy and effectiveness of the incoming Biden administration. And it's not even necessary to them that they believe what they're saying. And then I think less intelligent, less informed, less aware Republican partisans just seize on it because it's what they want to believe. So do you just believe accusations because they're convenient, because you hear them on Fox News and on talk radio, without finding substantial, concrete substantiation, evidence for these accusations? So for me, a very useful heuristic, whether or not partisan attacks have validity, is to look at how does the other side portray them, regard them. Do the only people who embrace your theory, are they all partisans on your side? Okay, then probably a theory without substance. But if your side is making a series of attacks and there are some other people on the other side who grant, okay, there may be something to this, we need an investigation, that some of these points are solid, to me that's a useful heuristic, meaning a self-learning tool, an approximation. So when the push to impeach Richard Nixon was purely partisan, then he was okay. And then as soon as the push to impeach Richard Nixon started to gather Republican support, then you knew that it was real. So the push to impeach Donald Trump never gained substantial Republican support, so that's how you could know it wasn't real. Now, I think you'll know this voter fraud story is real when you start to notice a lot of, or some number of nonpartisan people signing on. So people who aren't Republican hacks, people who aren't Republican activists, they start signing on with the story. Then you know that there's probably something to it. When you see academics who don't have a knife in the fight, a dog in the fight, start to say, oh, there's things we need to investigate here. When you encounter Democratic politicians who start to say, yeah, it looks like there was substantial voter fraud in the 2020 election, that's when you know you're dealing with something real. Because there are proportionally as many fair-minded Democrats as there are fair-minded Republicans. There are proportionally just as many Democrats with an ability to be objective as there are Republicans. So, for example, when Democrats promoted clean air, clean water legislation, it attracted a moderate amount of Republican support because there are a lot of Republicans who care about clean air and clean water. So too, there are a lot of Democrats who care about voter fraud. So, to my mind, you'll know that voter fraud is real when prominent Democrats start signing on. And even less prominent Democrats start signing on, saying it appears that there was significant voter fraud in 2020. No, there are not as many fair-minded Democrats. Okay, I don't know how one would objectively evaluate that. So that's just my impression. So there are Democratic congressmen, congresswomen, Democratic academics, Democratic political operatives who want to become famous, who want to become respected, who want to launch a career. And they could do that if they signed on with this voter fraud narrative and were able to substantiate it. So it wouldn't take that much for them to say, hey, this is bad for the country. We need to have more confidence in our elections. there appear to be some serious problems here, and we need an investigation. We need to issue subpoenas. Because let's say you're a Democrat who leads this charge, you will get all over the news media. You'll be profiled on 60 Minutes. You'll be written up in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times. And if you're able to substantiate these charges, you'll be able to go out on the lecture circuit, earn $50,000 a speech. You'll be able to make your career. You'll be able to make a living. You'll be financially set for life. So, who would not want to do that? All right. Democratic Party is now the party of the weak-minded. It's changed. Listen to Halsey. Yeah, I don't buy that. Think of all the incentives one would get for coming forward with substantiation of voter fraud. You would be an American hero. So just as many Democrats as Republicans want to be known as American heroes, who want to be known for making the country a better place, who want to be known for tackling a serious problem. So once we start hearing from people who aren't partisan hacks, who aren't activists, who aren't Republican operatives, about how concerned they are about voter fraud in the 2020 election, then we'll have more reason to believe that this is a serious problem. American hero installed fat orange man neo-Nazi. So issues often start out as strongly partisan, like this one, charges of fraud in the 2020 election. They're all coming from the Republicans, just as in 2016, charges of electoral fraud in the presidential race all came from Democrats. Then eventually you had a few Republicans, just a very small number, who signed on and said that Russian interference was a problem. And so it started to have glimmerings of being a bipartisan issue. And that added substance. So I'm waiting to see, do we have any Democrats who signed on to the voter fraud story in 2020 and saying this is a serious issue? Or do we have any academics who've signed on yet and say this is a serious issue? Or editorial boards of major publications who signed on yet and said this is a serious issue? Because highly partisan issues like this don't stay 100% partisan for long when there's substance. The only time these issues stay 100% partisan is when they lack substance, when they're just rhetorical talking points. So let's say Trump's legal team continues to have nothing but failure in court. Trump loses his case. The Electoral College rules the 2020 election for Joe Biden. And you realize that the money that Trump solicited to fight the steal simply going into his political action committee and into the Republican Party, very little of it went into actually researching voter fraud. So how will you react then? Will you feel like, oh, I've been conned? And then how much legitimacy will you give to all those people who have been screaming voter fraud, voter fraud, voter fraud, and then it's never substantiated? We just keep on believing what you want to believe because it makes you feel good, and makes it easier to cope with a Joe Biden presidency? Or will you keep it up as payback for the Democrats for what they did in 2016?